after we left the punch bowl, we went and set up in another area. And there wasn't many people left in our platoon. I know I was in the lead unit on the hill, and it was just this here BAR man and myself. We were on the furthest point. And we had set up for the night, and he took the first watch. I took the second watch. And while I was on my second watch, I was sitting on the ground with my poncho over me, my rifle laying beside of me, and I had a grenade in my hand. And I was getting near the end of my shift, and I started to doze a little, and I heard like a branch snap. And I didn't move my head, I just looked around, and I seen a whole squad of Chinese coming up the hill right in front of me. And I waited, and I pulled the pin on the grenade. I didn't try to get my rifle, because if I made any kind of movement, they might have, because I probably looked like a rock sitting there with my poncho and my helmet on. So when it got just so close to me, I pulled the pin and I threw that grenade out there, and it lights up the sky, because it sparkles. And I could see there's about 7, 8 of them right there. And they seen that grenade coming. They started to turn tail and run. And I watched them, and I jumped in the foxhole, and it exploded. I came up firing, and the whole hillside was let out firing. And as quickly as it started, it ended, And then the sergeant came around. He says, we're on a red alert. Nobody sleeps. So come morning, we had to go down and check all the dead. I had about five of them out in front of my position that were killed. And I even got a little medal I took off the one that was there, because we had to make sure that their bodies weren't booby-trapped either. They'll sneak back and booby-trap the bodies on us. And I still got that medal. After that, Sergeant came around. He said, look for volunteers to go out and take that knoll out there. And he said, you, and you. So off I went. I slipped and fell because I was coming up on the flank. And I thought, well, I'll come around the side and go in there. But I slipped and I fell, and I dropped about 10 feet, and my helmet fell off. And I watched it roll on down the hill. I came back the other way, and one guy looked at me and says, you're lucky. If you went around there, you walked right on into the enemy. So we went around the other way, and then we were throwing grenades over the top at them. They were throwing them over at us. A forward observer went with us, and he was killed. So they aborted the mission. I said maybe he was supposed to get up there and see if there's tanks or anything on the valley on the other side, call in coordinates for him. So they canceled the mission, and we went on back. And I got back, and my foxhole buddy told me, he said, the SEAL said he's going to put you in for a medal. Well, that's the last I ever heard of it. I couldn't care less, We moved out because the 23rd and 9th were still fighting for Heartbreak. And then when everybody was up in position, well, we were pinned down by enemy fire. And the sergeant said, all right, let's move out. Nobody moved. And just before that, I had seen this one guy sitting on a rock, and I looked at him. I said his name. He looked at me, and he said, Minnich. And that's all we ever said to each other. We took basic training together at Breckenridge, Kentucky. And I think it upset me so bad looking at him. He looked like he's been in hell for the last year. And I was really upset about it. So when the sergeant said, move out, nobody moved out. I remember I cussed everybody else in the platoon out, and I went charging up the hill. And I don't remember anything there, but they gave me a medal later, and they told me I single-handedly took out a gun emplacement, thus allowing the platoon to advance. I'm going up the hill, and I heard somebody yell at me, and he said, Minnich, there's Chinese behind you. I don't know what I did, but I do remember the next thing I know, I looked and I could see this jet come shooting down out of the sky, and I started to wave at it, with my rifle in my hands, and I looked at it, I says, he's shooting us, take cover. And I heard a guy behind me yell, my thumb. I turned and looked at him. A 50 caliber blew his thumb off. And I remember going behind a rock. I remember a jet going back off the way they came in. I always thought it was only one jet, but I talked to this radio man years later, and he confirmed there was 2 jets. And he said the CO called in for an air support, not realizing that we had advanced so far up the hill that we were scraped by our own jets. Now, how many people we lost there, I really don't know. But After that, I remember going up the hill, and I'm still leading the assault. I don't know why. I think I was still upset. You do things, you don't know why you do things. But I know I was going up there, I fired my rifle, and I could see the enemy about 25 yards, 30 yards in front of me. And the clip kicked out of my rifle. I grabbed another clip to throw it in there. And all of a sudden, I felt like a needle went right through my shoulder. And my arm wasn't working. I realized right then and there that I was shot. So I hit the ground. And the only reason I hit the ground is because if I tried to run for cover, I was too much in the open. I probably would have been killed. So I hit the ground and I laid there and I played dead. And while I'm laying there, I could see the enemy in front of me. They're still shooting back and forth. And I thank God they were Chinese and not North Koreans, because the North Koreans would have shot my body full of, because they hated the Americans and they didn't take prisoners. I could see a machine gunner setting up back there, and I started yelling back, letting him know I was alive and if they could give me some cover fire. Now, whether he heard me or not, I don't know. But when he started laying down the cover fire, I took my chance because it was getting close to being dark. And I knew if I didn't get out of there before it got dark, I probably never would have seen the sunlight again. So I took my chance, pushed myself off the ground, and I started running like hell. And I could see the bullets ticking up the ground at my feet. And I thank God I made it to safety. And a medic came over and he cut my shirt away and everything else. He said, well, I got some good news and I got some bad news for you. I said, well, give me the good news. He said, well, the good news is you probably got $1 million wound and you're probably going to go home. And I said, what's the bad news? He says, little bears just went down the hill with all the dead and wounded. You're going to have to wait for them to get back before they can take you down. I said, don't worry about me. I says, I can walk, Well, I guess he had to run off and take care of another wounded. So I just took off. And I know I was below the skyline when I was walking. At least I had sense enough to do that. And I was being shot at. And all I could think of was, I got to get back to my platoon. And next thing I remember, I'm being put in a bunker with another company. And I was shaking. I said, I probably was going in and out of shock and never knew it. Medic, he took his fatigue jacket off, wrapped me in it, and I stayed that bunker during the night. And I woke up one time during the night and I could hear a firefight going on up the hill. And I asked him, what is that? He said, that's Charlie Company up there, they're cut off. I said, oh shit, that's my company. Next morning, they took us down the hill and they took us to a MASH unit and they treated me, wrapped me up, and I know the nurse was wrapping my shoulder up and everything else. And I could smell the perfume. I said, oh, that smells like heaven. I said, I haven't seen a woman in a few months, and just to smell that perfume, I said, she was the most beautiful thing in the world. I think I was flown to Yokohama General Hospital. And then finally, I think it was, I was wounded on October 12th, and on December 3rd, I reported back to my unit. I didn't have $1 million wound. I didn't go home. And one guy told me later, so the trouble, Minnich, is you weren't in Korea long enough in your experience, they wanted you back.